Using chords as part of a bass line isn't always the most obvious technique, but it can be really effective when applied correctly. So let's explore some of the best applications of bass chords, the different types you can incorporate, and what to avoid or watch out for when playing them. Let's begin with the question of why would you want to use chords on bass in the first place? While there are many reasons for this, one main benefit is the thicker low end they provide to any section of a song. So if you have a part of a composition that sounds lacking, swapping out a single note bass line for chords could help fix this. It works especially well in more minimalist arrangements to help fill out the sound. As a quick example to demonstrate the different sound chords can bring to a mix, here's a song using a simple root to note bass line, which I then swapped out for chords in the second playthrough. When it comes to shapes, double stops and partial chords often work best. Adding too many notes, especially in the lower register, can quickly muddy up your sound due to the instrument's lower tuning. For this reason, I usually stick to 2 to 3 notes at a time, sometimes even separating these out on individual tracks for added flexibility. If you wanted to play a major 7th chord, for example, you could record the notes individually and then rebalance a 3 track to emphasize more or less of each note that forms a complete chord. I'd also avoid playing chords on the E and A strings together, particularly lower on the neck, as this can sound quite muddy. It could work in some contexts, though I can't say I found much use for this personally. Instead, I typically play power chords with the root notes starting on the A or D strings. Some good shapes to begin with would be a 5th, which is made up of the 1st and 5th notes, a 3rd, which is the 1st and 3rd notes, and if you drop that 3rd down by 1, you'll form the minor equivalent. A tritone, which is a similar shape to the 5th, but with this note now dropped down by 1 half step. Or you could invert these shapes too, so if you played a C power chord down here, you could play the same chord elsewhere, but swap the order of the notes so the root note is no longer the lowest in pitch. All of these used in sequence can be really helpful for stringing together chords and arpeggios without making them sound too jumpy or unnatural. One trick I really like to use with these shapes is a 3-part layering technique. It combines a root to note bass line, double stops, and a synth bass. The first track simply outlines your progression by playing the root notes of each chord. Here I'm using B, F sharp, C sharp, and D sharp as my root notes. The second track uses the same notes, but with the shapes I showed earlier. In this case, I'm using a mixture of power chords and inverted power chords to layer underneath the first track. One thing to note is that it's often best to play the chords in a higher register than the root notes to reduce the frequency overlap. For example, if I'm playing a B note on the 2nd fret of the A string, I could start the power chord an octave higher at the 9th fret of the D string, or play an inversion starting on the 4th fret of the D string. Finally, the 3rd track adds a bass synth, playing the same root notes as track 1. It's usually a good idea to use a sound that contrasts significantly with the live bass tracks. Alternatively, you could even use a sub bass if you want to emphasize the low end even more. Altogether, this creates a really cool bass part that works great in bigger sections of your song, like a bridge or chorus. There are plenty of other tricks to learn from this style of bass playing too, all of which I've put together in this quick video.